What's up, everyone? Thanks so much for checking out the Sanjana Fitness Hatha Yoga YouTube channel. Today's practice is going to be yoga for healing the inner child. This practice is not intended to diagnose or treat any condition, nor is it going to cure childhood trauma, but it is a good opportunity to be introspective and learn how to care for the body and the mind in ways that you maybe weren't cared for as a child. So when you're ready, come to the mat with whatever you might need to get comfortable. There will be opportunities for props, blocks, pillows, maybe even a blanket if you want to bring that along, or even a stuffed animal if you have that and that feels good to you. We'll get started in extended child's pose in the middle of your mat when you're ready. Okay, so coming to the mat for extended child's pose, you'll bring the big toes into touch and send the knees as wide as the mat or wherever is comfortable. Send your hips back toward the heels, extend your hands toward the top of the mat. Bring your forehead to the mat, and this is where we'll start to drop in. So we're theming today's practice around healing your inner child. That's going to look different for everybody. And maybe you don't know exactly what you need to do that, so I would just encourage you, as always, to be present, to be curious, to remind yourself that this is a safe space, that you are in control of your own practice. Just to listen to what your body needs and what your mind needs on the mat. Take this time to take inventory of what you feel in the physical body, the intellectual body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body. As you're settling in and taking that inventory, you might think about a mantra for today's practice related to healing the inner child. Maybe something like, I am enough, or I deserve the love and care that I give to others, or I am my own sanctuary. Try to think of a mantra, maybe an image or sensation that grounds you to the theme of the practice. And as always, start to connect deeply with the breath. If you have no idea where to begin in your own healing journey, I would recommend just observing and being present today. Just noticing your reactions to different poses or concepts introduced through the practice. Feel free to gently roll the forehead left and right on your mat if it feels good. Or remain in stillness if you find focus and grounding there. Feel supported by the earth. And just start to imagine this bubble of self-care that you're creating for yourself. Feel free to explore in any way that your body's asking you to. So maybe just reaching the fingertips a little bit further. Maybe sinking the hips down closer toward the heels. Or just settling in stillness. Get connected with some deep cycles of breath before you move out of this pose. Notice the sensations of your inhales. And let go of something on your exhale. Stay in this pose as long as your body needs. As long as your mind needs. Stay here until you're grounded. When you're ready to move out of this pose, we'll start by bringing our awareness to the fingertips, pressing through all 10 fingertips to lift the forearms and the elbows, then the forehead, lifting the gaze to those fingertips and slowly walking your hands up toward the body. We're going to come into a tabletop position for cat-cow next. So go ahead and get there how you get there. Move with care. Give yourself the love you give to others. And once in that tabletop position with palms under the shoulders, knees under the hips, we'll connect with the natural breathing rhythm. Inhale, drop the belly, lift the gaze, tail toward the ceiling. And exhale, pressing into the palms and the shins and the tops of the feet. Low ribs come inward. Inhale, drop the belly. Continue following that organic movement. We are going to practice lion's breath in just a second, which is a deeply cleansing breath and very grounding. If you want to skip that, you can also incorporate any other easy movement here, drawing circles with the ribs or the hips, just listening to your body. So sync up with me on your next inhale. We'll drop the belly, drop the low ribs, inhale really deeply. And as we exhale, we're going to stick out the tongue and look toward the third eye. So you're going to give a deep exhale outward. So I'll sync us up again. So coming back to tabletop, we'll take one deep inhale, drop the belly, lift the gaze. And on your exhale, looking up toward the third eye, sticking out the tongue, big exhale. It's going to feel a little silly, but that's kind of the point of today's practice. And it's really detoxifying. So sync up with your breath. And lion's breath on your exhale. You can do this as much or as little as you want to. Some people love it, some people hate it. If you hate it, I think you should reflect on why. So go ahead and continue with lion's breath or any easy organic movement you found here in cat-cow. Don't be afraid to be playful and curious. Listen to the sensations of the body and give your mind what it's asking for here. Take as much time here as you want, practicing lion's breath or Taking your cat-cow off the rails, getting creative. When you feel good about it, we're going to come into our first downward dog. So coming back to that neutral spine, tabletop position, we'll curl the toes under. Notice the sensation of all 10 toes touching the mat. If you can't feel that, go ahead and use your hands to connect. Make sure those toes are all pressing into the mat and just notice the sensation in each and every toe. So put your mind's eye there. Be present. And when you're ready to come up, we'll send the hips up high and back toward the ceiling. Heels come toward the floor, but maybe don't touch. That's okay. Rotate the palms away from one another and find that nice flat back. So let's be present in this downward dog. Maybe look underneath your left shoulder or your right, checking out the change of perspective. Being playful, being curious, grounding yourself in the body, connecting with the breath. You might bend into each knee, alternating, pressing through the feet, noticing the sensation of the toes, pressing all 10 toes into the mat. You can also just remain in stillness if that's what's calling to you today. If you're there, I just encourage you to turn inward or enjoy this inverted perspective of the room. From here, we're going to walk up to a standing forward fold, but we're going to do that in a slightly different way than we have in the past. We're going to engage our abductors and adductors to walk that invisible tightrope through the center line of the mat. But when you lift your left foot, we're going to bring it out to the left as far as you can, and then just take a really small step in front of the right foot. We're going to alternate on each side doing that. So just lifting that right leg out to the right, taking one tiny step forward, noticing what you feel and where. You're likely getting some engagement in the glute medius, which is underactivated, so it might feel kind of crazy. Try to enjoy the journey. Be grateful, be present. Notice any judgment that comes up or anxiety. Let's observe that and let it go. Continue walking that tightrope until you get to your standing forward fold, feet about hip width apart, rooting down through the heels. Again, pressing into all 10 toes and maybe using your fingers to set up that connection and be present in those connections. Maybe shaking out the head and neck. We'll be here for a moment, so feel free to explore. There's lots of variations to this pose, including clasping opposite elbows with opposite hands, resting the forehead there. You can gently sway from left to right with the elbows clasped or hands on the floor. At the same time, be present in the sensations of the body. So we're lengthening through the hamstrings here, looking to eventually come to full extension at the knee. It's not possible for everybody, but if your hamstrings are tight, bring your awareness there. And if this is impossible, bend into the knees as much as you need. You can also incorporate your blocks here if you're nowhere near the floor. You can move with those blocks to frame the right foot or the left. Wherever you are, breathe deep. All the way through the posterior chain, deep into the hamstrings. Connecting to those long lines of energy from your roots all the way up through the hands, back to the mat. And when you feel totally satisfied, we're going to reverse what we just did to get here. So we're just going to walk the feet back. Very slowly. Abducting and then letting the foot fall. Creating these tiny backward steps until you come all the way back into a plank. Take your time getting there. Moving slowly and with intention. I'm kind of just playing around. So coming into your plank pose, full extension at the elbows. We're going to maintain control, maintain that straight line from the crown of your head all the way back through the heels. And we'll lower to the belly as slowly as we can. Resisting gravity until maybe you collapse or land on the mat. Once you're there, extend through the feet, press the tops of the feet into the mat and notice that connection. We'll press up like we're coming into Cobra, but instead we're going to come onto the elbows and forearms for Sphinx pose. Reconnecting with the breath here. This is a very grounding asana because we're pretty much completely on the ground aside from the upper torso. So just take a moment to feel supported by the earth once again. To reconnect with the breath. Maybe close your eyes if it feels good. Notice the connections between the body and the mat. Put your mind's eye where you feel a sensation in the physical body and just observe. Notice if your mind is judgmental or distracted. If it is, we'll let go of attachment. Observe that and move on. And reconnect with the sound of the breath. You might remember your mantra. I deserve the love and care that I give to others. I am my own sanctuary. Or I am enough. Or any other mantra you had coming into the practice. Just recenter yourself on that. Nice and open through the chest. Nice deep breaths. From here, we're going to release the elbows and forearms, come down onto the chest. We'll bend into both knees. We're going to try to grab the outside edge of each foot with the corresponding hand. So do your best. If you can't do this, you can hang out in Sphinx. Stay connected to the breath. If you are able to grab the feet, we're then going to oppose the hands and feet, pressing up onto the abdominal wall, just stretching through the posterior chain, through the back. Creating that tension in the abdominal cavity. Really noticing those sensations. Maybe rocking a little forward and backward because it's fun. Stay here as long as you like. And release when you're ready. Bringing the knees back down to the earth. Pressing up onto all fours. And we'll once again come into child's pose. So you can come into the extended child's pose that we started with. Or bring the knees and shins together. Send the hips back toward the heels. Bring your forehead to the mat. And open up the palms to the left and right of the feet.
I always like to take this opportunity just to massage the feet and the ankles, pay attention to those parts of the body that are sometimes neglected. And it's also just a good opportunity to give yourself the care you deserve. So feel free to explore or find stillness in this child's pose. Turn inward. Connect with the breath. Notice if anything's coming up for you. And look for opportunities to let go of what you don't need. Remember the bubble of self-care that you've created for yourself. Remember that you are in control here on the mat. This is your practice. Make it your own. And let's let go of the future right now, so not planning for the day or the week. Not remembering or dwelling on the past. Taking this opportunity in this bubble just to be here now. Take a few more cycles of breath just to turn inward. When you're ready to come out of this pose, you might start by opening the eyes, bringing the palms under the shoulders, pressing into the mat just to lift up. And from here, we're going to come forward onto all fours once again. We're going to challenge the balance a little bit and be a little playful in these next couple poses. So get set up with a strong foundation, knees under hips, palms under the shoulders, not sinking into the spine here, but really grounded, long line through the spine. We're going to start by lifting that left hand up and extending fully through the elbow, keeping the arm parallel to the ground, reaching the fingertips forward. We're going to do the same thing to the right leg. So start by sinking your weight into that right palm and left knee, extending through the right knee on the ball of the right foot, maybe pressing through the toes, and then lifting that leg parallel to the mat. We'll hold here for just a second. Practice your balance. Find a fixed focal point on the floor or the mat. If you fall out of it, no big deal. Just come right back into it. Set up the same way we did. Take your time. Give yourself this time. And then maybe bend into that right knee. Bring that left hand to the outside edge of that right foot. And once again, oppose the hand and the foot, pressing up toward the ceiling. Noticing the engagement you get and where. And again, if you fall out of it, no big deal. Just get right back in. Notice the quality of your balance today. Just observing. Take your time here, play around, try again. And when you're ready, slowly, gently, mindfully release that right knee and left palm to the mat. We're going to, of course, do the same thing on the second side. So we'll start by extending
through that right elbow, fingers forward, sinking our weight into that left palm and right shin this time. We'll extend through the left knee, keeping the toes on the floor, maybe pressing through all 5 toes. And then lifting that left foot off the mat, staying engaged totally through that leg. Full extension in that left knee, so really straight line. Parallel to the mat. Find your balance. Find your focal point. Play around a little bit, fall out, get back in, no judgment. And maybe bend into that left knee and bring that right hand to the outside edge of the left foot. Once you're there, pose the hand and foot, pressing them up toward the ceiling. Noticing what you feel and where without getting overwhelmed. If you fall out, get right back in. When you feel you've successfully challenged the balance, slowly, gently, mindfully release that left knee and right hand back to the mat. From here, we're going to come into a yogi squat. So we're going to curl the toes under, walk the hands up toward the body, feet about hip width apart. We'll heel toe the feet a little bit wider than hip width apart, pointing the toes away from one another. Bring the elbows to the inside edges of the knees, palms together at the heart space, sinking down through the hips and getting nice and long through the spine. Notice what you feel. Connect deeply with the breath. And when you're ready, gently release the palms toward the mat. We'll extend fully to the through the knees, Let's heel toe the feet back into about hip width apart with the toes pointing straight toward the top edge of the mat. Coming into another standing forward fold. We're just going to articulate through the spine as slowly as possible to come up to mountain pose. So take your time, dragging the fingertips across the toes and tops of the feet. Up the ankles, the shins. Moving slowly and mindfully. Coming all the way up to standing, slow as you can go. When you get there, roll the shoulders back, reconnect with the breath. Get nice and long through the spine. Maybe open up the palms toward the ceiling and take a deep breath. Let something go on your exhale. All right, we're going to continue to challenge the balance here by first stepping forward with that right foot and coming into a warrior 2. So you can angle that back foot toward the top left corner of your mat. Try to create something close to a 90-degree angle in this right knee. Open up the arms parallel to the ground. Really reaching, nice strong posture through the upper body and spine. Pull the shoulders back, reconnect with the breath. And we're going to practice moving from warrior 2 into warrior 3. I'm actually going to have to reset on my mat to have enough space for that, and then I'll talk you through it as we go. If you know what that transition looks like, feel free to get started on it right now. So warrior 2 to warrior 3. Warrior 3 is that balancing pose where we lift the back foot off the ground and maybe send the arms back behind us or hands on the waist. So to do that, we're going to slowly shift our weight forward of that right knee, pivot on the back foot to lift that back leg, and send the arms back and behind you, slowly lifting that leg to parallel to the ground. If you need to use blocks here, totally feel free to do that. If you need to hold your leg, feel free to do that too. We're just challenging the balance here, building strength in that right leg, just playing a little bit. And when it's enough for you, sink back into that left foot, land back in that warrior two. So feel free to play around with that for a couple of moments. Try some other variations. Be curious. Support your body in the ways that it needs. And settle back into that warrior two when you're ready to come out. To move through this, we're going to vinyasa. So we'll cycle the hands down to frame that right foot, or maybe slightly ahead of that right foot, depending where you are on the mat. Pivot on that back foot, send the right foot back for plank. Slowly lower to the belly. Press up for cobra or upward facing dog, whatever's in your practice today. And send the hips up high and back for downward dog. We'll walk the hands back up toward the body. Once again, we'll slowly articulate through the spine, dragging the fingertips along the front edge of the body. Moving slowly and with intention. Enjoying the journey. Opening up through the chest for mountain pose, reconnecting with the breath. And this time we'll set up for warrior two on the second side. So we'll send that left foot forward. Go ahead and center yourself however you need to make that warrior two to warrior three transition. So I'm standing kind of toward the back edge of my mat here. Once we get there, angle that back foot, your right foot, toward the right edge of the mat a little bit. Bending into that left knee to about 90 degrees. Arms parallel to the ground. When you're ready to transition, do so mindfully. Pressing up off of that right foot, bringing the arms back and behind you, finding that parallel, balancing pose. Incorporating your blocks or props, or just bringing your hands to the floor if you need to. Exploring and being curious in the body. Take your time here. Play as much as your inner child is asking you for. If it's stimulating, continue. If you hate it, try to observe that. Make a note of it and let go of that attachment. When you're ready to come out, we'll sink back into that right foot, coming back into that warrior two. And then cycle the hands down to frame that left foot. Send the left foot back for plank. We'll slowly lower to the belly. Cobra or upward facing dog. Melt it back down, and then we'll press up to all fours from here, coming back to that tabletop position. You can center yourself on the mat. Cross at the ankles and roll back. We're a seated posture. We're gonna come into a seated forward fold. So if you know that's inaccessible for you, if you know your hamstrings are really tight, go ahead and bring the soles of the feet to the mat, bend into the knees, and you will fold with your arms wrapped behind the thighs. So go ahead and transition into that pose if that's you. Otherwise, we'll have full extension at the knees here. Find that nice long posture through the spine. Reconnect with the breath. Send the hands up and overhead. Palms facing one another, really reaching. Getting a little longer. And then hinging at the hips. Imagine sending the hands beyond the feet, but wherever they land, they land. You can bring your hands to the outside edges of the shins and open the palms toward the ceiling. You can gently hold the ankles or the outsides of the knees, whatever works for you. not forcing any shape here or any particular sensations. Just being receptive to the signals that the body is sending you. Letting go of anything you don't need right now. And offering whatever your inner child is asking for. So it could be that self-embrace with arms around the knees. Could be that deep relaxation through the head and the neck, the shoulders. Could be that deep connection through the sensations of the hamstrings, the sits bones and the earth. Could be a very passive version of this pose with some really deep breath work, whatever your body and mind need. Again, if the feet are accessible to you here, I personally just like to feel the connection, the heat of my hands on my feet, on my toes. You can massage through the feet or the calves. When we're coming out of this pose, we're going to do so slowly and mindfully. Mindfulness really begins at slowing down, so always challenge yourself to slow down, and that will help you be present. So anyway, we're going to sink down through the sits bones here, and we're going to slowly drag the fingers once again along the front edge of the body, up the shins, the knees, the thighs. And from here, we're going to transition down to our backs. So you can just continue moving as we are, slowly articulating through the spine and lowering the torso down to the mat. Or you can do something more playful, more fun, or more accessible to you. So whatever that looks like, that's what you should do. Feel free to grab a pillow if you want one. If you have a blanket, we'll be finishing in kind of like a cuddly shavasana. So if you want to bring that or a stuffy or something, get that ready. I'll make sure you have what you need here. So from here, we're just going to tuck the knees toward the chest. Give yourself a little embrace. Connect with the breath. Maybe rock gently side to side. Remember your mantra. Notice the sensation of your embrace. Practice gratitude for that. And then we'll transition into happy baby or any version of that pose that's accessible to you. So I'm going to bring my hands to the outside edges of the feet here and open up the knees, pressing the knees down toward the armpit chest. And maybe just rocking gently side to side, or extending through the knees, or being playful in any way that calls to you. If this is inaccessible to you, you can bring the hands to the backs of the knees, and same thing here. If you're feeling any judgment in this pose, I would encourage you to observe that and let it go. All right, from here we're gonna do like a happy baby does and use the hands to bring the feet together. And then just lower the feet, the knees, toward the mat. Supine butterfly. Reclined cobbler's pose. Letting the hands rest on the body or anywhere that is comfortable for you. Grab your blanket here, your pillow, your stuffy, whatever you need. And just start to settle in. Start to relax the body. Reconnect with and notice the breath. Observe any changes in your mood or nervous system from the beginning of the practice till now. Reflect back on any of the poses that felt rejuvenating for you or comforting. And maybe consider incorporating those poses into your daily spiritual or yogic practice. Settle into the mat, and for the third time, feel the support of the earth underneath you. Root down through the ground, notice those connections. Remember your mantra, I am enough, I am my own sanctuary, or I deserve the love and care that I give to others. Let's internalize that while we're here. And as we wrap up the practice, you can finish in this pose if it feels good. Just stay where you're at. Or extend through both knees. Come into Shavasana. Maybe opening the palms up toward the ceiling, back of the hands touching the floor. Or just resting the hands on the body. It's your practice. If you have a blanket that you want to put over you, you can do that. If you have a blanket that you want to cuddle with, or stuffy, you can finish this practice on your side. So transition however you will. Stack the body on one side or the other, stacking the knees, hips, and ankles. And maybe holding your cuddly object in front, giving you something to hold, something to squeeze. We'll close out the practice in any of that poses that feels meaningful or rejuvenating for you. As you absorb the nutrients of today's practice, I would encourage you to take this last opportunity to let go of anything you don't need and to be intentional about the ways you show up for yourself today and this week. Before we close the practice, I want to recognize that I am teaching from unceded Monongahela and Osage lands. I encourage you to find out whose indigenous lands you are practicing from and to get involved in their ongoing liberation work. If you want to join me in bringing palms together to rest gently at the forehead or space between the eyebrows or a third eye, please feel free to do so. I also want to recognize that yoga is an ancient spiritual practice stemming from the subcontinent of India and Indian culture. So we recognize and honor that cultural heritage without appropriation. I also want to encourage you, if you view yoga as exercise or as movement, medicine, to look a little more deeply into the broader parts of yoga, like the spiritual aspects of yoga. Yoga is a spiritual practice. Yoga functions as many things to many people around the world. For us, it functions as a community. I thank you so much for being part of my community today. I hope you got something you needed here today, and I hope to see you again soon. Namaste.